John and I go way back. I got to admit, I tried to find some pictures of you online, John, and some reason Valentino the cat came up. So I kind of
No idea.
like kind of fit. Maybe it was Vintzel. I don't know. I might have put a couple words after that in my search. I won't go there, but yeah. So now you're John Valentino Vintzel. I thought that worked out well. So
Nice.
so John John's going to talk to us about application deployment. So I'll stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you.
I do love the Michigan gnome. That's fantastic.
You like that? Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Can you guys kind of see this?
I see it.
Cool. All right. So, total application deployment, there's mostly MSIX, but I got some other stuff around app deployment here. I do want to apologize a little in advance here. I had a couple demos and my VM died late last night, and I did not rebuild it in time, so I pulled my demo. So most of it's simple stuff, and I can come back another time and kind of show it off if you guys want to see it. But I apologize. It's going to be mostly slideware this time. I do like to do a few demos usually. So for folks who don't know me, thanks for the intro, Greg. I'm John Vintzel. I'm a PM lead in the Microsoft Core Operating Systems division, Windows, really focusing on developer techs. Anything that is a deployment tech, I feel like I own AppV, MSI, MSIX, and I own a lot of the Windows app deployment strategy. So if you're having problems with apps, it's probably my fault. So let's kind of just dive in here. So I figured I'd start off with just kind of a recap of what's kind of going on with MSIX, like where we are today, recapping since Ignite. We shipped 2004 since then, so kind of catch people up. I didn't cover everything at Ignite, so it might be helpful for people to kind of know things that are happening here. First thing I always like to talk about is like, where are we with supported OSs? Obviously, MSIX started with 1809. And then we quickly added support for 1709 and 1803 for enterprises. So it's a really good thing, because now that pretty much covers all the Windows 10 OSs you guys have in an enterprise. We did add support for Server 2019 as well. I forgot when we added that, but it was sometime mid last year. It's strictly for enterprise apps. We don't support the Windows or the Microsoft Store on the Windows Server OS, mostly because people don't want to start talking to those types of cloud endpoints. So kind of makes sense. But if you have your apps package, maybe you're doing things like remote desktop services, you can leverage Server 2019 and deploy those apps. And then, one of the other things that we did, and this started in the 2004 release, is we removed sideloading. So it was one of these weird things as we kind of looked at the MSIX platform and some of the other platforms that we built off of we tried to, have controls to kind of lock down the OS or not lock down the OS. And as people started uptaking the technology, they were like, why do I have to turn it on? Like, why do you guys even have this? If I just want to deploy an XE, I just deploy an XE. There's no control there. If I want to control stuff, I'll use things like app.
Okay, while we have downtime, what's the plan when we're allowed to gather in person again? Good question on this, and I would love some feedback. You can send in here or not. I'll ramble for just a minute or two. So specific for NWSCUG and Brian and Mike, if you guys would like, feel free to add in as well. But for Northwest System Center user group, we certainly hope to go back to in-person meetings. It is nice to see people. I do get, though, that a lot of people like the ability to join remote, because it's hard to sometimes commit the day, cross the bridge, go to Bellevue, blah, blah, blah. I will tell you some experiences. I think it was from when I was in Central Texas Systems Management User Group. When we started doing remote meetings, or let's say both, right? Our attendance went down quite a bit on our in-person meetings, so which always kind of stunk, right? So there's probably balance there, but certainly get it. And obviously by doing it this way, people from around the world are able to join our meetings. So I think there's a lot of value in it. So I think from NWSCUG, I think we'll probably try to do both. Now, once we're back in a room together, I guess maybe the online presence might be slightly different. It's kind of hard to run both, but I think we'll go that way. But would love to have some perspective, from NWSCUG as well as everybody else. It is really nice to see people though, but definitely I see Nicholas mentioned as well, right? It is great because I think we get a lot of good free training out of these, and being able to share it to a larger audience is a good thing. But the networking and the ability to have to meet other people is wonderful. So I'm assuming, and we should probably put this on our survey for the end of the day. Maybe I'll throw that on there to see, what your thoughts are. Do you want to have in person with a hybrid of online presence as well, or do you really want to focus on just in person meeting? So let's see. John, did you get it back to us? Yeah, we really lost him. Okay. All right. So I will add that. Let's see what else we got. I'll just there. I muted all, but feel free if you were coming off mute to talk to go ahead and come back off mute. What's going on, Josh? So we had a blip in Teams, and we're waiting to see if John's able to join us back. So Brian threw a link out there as well for some. Oh yeah, the mic noise. Sound like somebody was driving down the street or something. Yeah, driving a semi.
I pinged John internally, so hopefully he'll reply back.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I hit him on Twitter too, but I don't see him yet. Let's see. Brian mentions VSmug. Yep. So I just brought up that site as well. We'll add that to the list. I don't know, Brian, if you added that to your list of user groups. Probably a good one. Let's see. In-person events should still be streamed over Teams live events. Yeah, so let's talk about Teams live events as well. So we've debated a little bit about that for these meetings, just kind of weighing pros and cons, and would love for anybody to chime in as well for that. So, the big thing with live events, right, it is more of a presenter type of session, right, where you have a presenter and you have attendees, and you're in that scenario. Attendees can never come off mute. You can't cross over from an attendee to a presenter, right? So there's a little more planning, I think, involved, a little more, I think even, the people that present, maybe they have to have accounts in your O365 as well. So we haven't crossed the threshold, which is now 350 attendees, to where we'd have to look at that. But that's been kind of the big reasons why we haven't moved to Teams live events, because we want the ability to promote an attendee to a presenter or take them off mute, allow them to speak. And if I'm missing some features there and those things are available, by all means, let me know. But we have toyed with that. But there's just some pros and cons there to weigh out. Yeah, Teams doesn't allow the chat between users either. So it is more of a, presenter, consumer type of thing. So yeah. Brian mentions Midway is still open. So definitely check out that if you'd like. Let's see, did I miss anything else here? Somebody, Brian from the Netherlands, says he enjoys these online events. That's a good thing. They're on Fridays, so I know for a lot of people that might be a bad thing, but for us, we try to keep it on the third Friday. And, since it's Northwest System Center Group, we've been focused on our, Pacific time. There are several user groups that have gone online. So definitely take a look out there. Keep an eye on Twitter. We all try to retweet and promote each other. So there's a lot of good information there. Let's see, William Smith from Ohio. Hello, fellow brother. I'm from Ohio, if you weren't aware. Let's see. Any other random questions? I know we have several geeks online, so if you want to throw out some tech questions, we can do a little bit of that here while we wait as well. Anything pressing or any table topics you'd like to bring up? Congrats on escaping. I miss Ohio. I know John's not here because he'd throw that out. Yeah, Windows Virtual Desktop is a future topic. I think that would be good as well. I'll add that to the list. And we did throw that poll out, so let me pitch that poll again. Let me bring this over. Well, actually, this is just a table topic poll. We have another one for future events that we'll throw out later. Anybody have any good resources around Power BI reporting? Doug, WVD, you say you know a speaker. Yeah, if you'd like to reach out to your speaker, and then, you have maybe some specific EDU scenarios. If you guys want to partner, or if you want to recommend someone for our September meeting, that would be great. I have started my list. We put Brian down for leveraging ConfigMan active passive to migrate to new OS hardware. Let's see. So I'm going to add WVD. Doug, I'm going to put your name down for now. Doug plus one. How about that?
Greg, I just did a Power BI session for the Charlotte user group for Julie Andriacola's group last week. So it's like getting started with Power BI. So if you can't find anybody, I'm happy to talk Power BI, but they don't record those user groups.
Okay, that works. And let's see. John hasn't been able to join us yet. We've got to 11:10. I don't know if you want to cover any of that now. I'll invite you to if you'd like, but if you're not prepped for it, that's completely fine.
Yeah, let me hang up on my server guy real quick and give me a couple minutes.
Yeah, no pressure, but yeah, if you got some stuff handy, that might be good.
Sure.
I don't dance very well, so yeah, it'd be great. Let's see. William mentions been exporting to an Azure DB from ConfigMan with PowerShell for a while, and connecting to Power BI. Interesting. Works well, makes it easier to build reports in a few cases. Let's see, Luis Martinez, curious how others are handling refreshes, reimaging, onboarding in regards to hardware setup now that most will work from home, specifically with SCCM and co-management. Let's see, I don't know if we got any of our OSD guys on, but if you can speak to that, that would be good, right? Refresh or replace a device now that people work from home. How are you managing that with ConfigMan, with or without co-management? Any insight there? Feel free to come off mute. Oh, and we do have David James as well, and he's offered. Hopefully you guys know David. He is all around Twitter, leading engineering for Microsoft around MemCM. Would love for you guys to ask any questions to him. You can do that here in the chat. Come off mute if you'd like, and David, if you'd like to come off mute as well, if you'd like to say anything, feel free, or ask any general questions to the audience. That would be great. Yeah, no news on dark mode. Preempted that one, I see. Let's see.
Yeah, I think I'm on a device that has a less than ideal mic, so I'm switching devices.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, that'd be great.
I'll step in and help John out.
Okay, sounds good to me. Let's see. Yeah, William mentions new OSD feature that will help users that are home users not quite on autopilot yet. Question on orchestration
Actually,
group updates.
Greg.
Yeah.
Greg, how did my mic sound? Does it sound muffled?
No, you sound fine.
Sounds okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me talk a little about 2006. I know when Adam was presenting, he said for those on 2002 or 2006, and then he said, well, no one has 2006 yet, but actually we did start customer deployments in 2006. We normally do those for about 3 weeks, and then we go into what we nickname fast ring, even though we never use that in public documentation. But with COVID on 2002, we took a little longer. So we're probably about 3 weeks from having 2006 come out publicly. But it's been done for about 4 weeks and been in testing. And it's looking pretty good. And there's, we started 2006 with the intent of it having less features because we were transitioning the whole team to work from home and all the things that were happening. But we got to the end of it, it actually has a lot of very interesting features, many of which have slipped out into tech preview. So we're pretty excited about 2006 when it comes out. The other thing that's interesting, and I know some of you guys watch Brad's Thursday backyard chats. We have telemetry and we see behaviors from customers, and so the world is kind of changing in a lot of ways. But if you ask questions, for example, have we slowed down upgrades of ConfigMan? Actually, 2002 upgraded at the same speed of all previous builds or faster. So that's an interesting statement that even with a lot of companies going into lockdown, a lot of companies still went ahead and deployed 2002 at the same rate that they did before. So it's kind of interesting. We also reacted to a lot of feedback, and we put 2006 in a way is kind of nicknamed our work from home release. So a lot of fixes in there to improve the ability to work from home. We have some CMG improvements, some more OSD behavior over CMG, defender management over CMG, BitLocker's a little better over CMG. So there's a lot of focus from my team on trying to improve work from home scenarios. So, look at that. And if you have more feedback on how we can improve those even more, send them our way, whether user voice or sending a smiley or a frown or just hitting us up on Twitter. We're really interested in how we can improve everyone's ability to manage, as Adam was saying, kind of any device anywhere, because for many of us, we might be in this situation for a while. So I don't know, Greg, if any questions popped up.
Yeah, a couple. First, you mentioned smiley frown. Can you give just a little bit of insight of so people understand how valuable that is and how it gets to your teams? I think that would be good if people could hear that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So we have that feedback experience built directly into the console, and we, I never remember the public name of things that we ship, but internally we call it sending a smile, sending a frown, or OCV. You go there and you can send feedback, either good feedback or bad feedback. What we like, or constructive feedback. What we like about this feature is, I've worked on the product now for a couple decades, and feedback from customer bug reports used to take us weeks to get to the engineer responsible for the bug. But now in this new system, many times it goes directly to that engineer that day, because we have a lot of automation. We actually have some artificial intelligence in there that's really good at analyzing the bug report and routing it. And we're still training those, which means that engineers get feedback almost real time. And when you can get, I don't know if you all feel like this in IT, but when you get feedback closer to the time that you caused an issue or made a mistake, you can fix it a lot faster. You still haven't context switched. So that faster feedback allows us to actually react to bugs and make quality improvements a lot faster. We have a lot of, I love seeing where people post on Twitter that they sent a frown and then they got back a notification saying, okay, we just fixed this in the code. And that end to end sometimes is less than 24 hours. And that's what that framework allows us to do, is just really get feedback fast and react to feedback fast. I also joke a little that, when you see something you like, send a smiley, just because especially now with no one going out to conferences and engineers being really kind of isolated from customers, that positive feedback really is encouraging to the engineers that work on the product and motivating and actually, I like to joke that it helps them code faster. But when you see something you like, send a smiley too, and that helps us know that we're on the right path.
I think that's great too, because developers may not be quite as visible on the social media like you are, and I think getting that feedback to them, it's a drive for all of us, right? Anytime we get a like or something on something we're doing, I think that's great, and I think just the feedback loop, like you mentioned, is great when you see somebody on Twitter say, "Wow, I sent this thing," and 4 hours later or 2 days later or whatever. Any of that's just amazing, right? Compared to kind of our old experience, which was, well, I guess for a long time, we really didn't have a way to really send that type of feedback, right? And then we got into these other scenarios where we can, but still a long time before you heard from anybody. But I think it's great.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's been really good.
Yeah. Anybody, if you've had some good experiences or any experiences with sending smile frowns, feel free to throw those in the chat. Would love to hear any other feedback you have on that. Let's see. One of the questions that came up, David, was around orchestration groups. Questions around any more updates on orchestration groups, and another one saying they had some keep getting failed on some, and reset option does nothing. So I don't know if you just want to talk about orchestration and groups in general.
Yeah.
Maybe some perspective.
Sorry, we've been working from home for so long. The releases are starting to bleed together. I want to say it's either 19 or 10 or 2002 had the first big chunk of functionality in orchestration groups in a long time. It was a little on the back burner as we were dealing mostly with changes in how Windows 10 patching was working. So we made a lot of investment in orchestration groups back in like 1602, 16.6, but then we had to redo just the patch stack in general for all of Windows. So we had to pause. But we got back to it. We have a UI design that we're really happy with that's been reworked. And so I'm not sure if the comments about getting failed or reset is pre our recent rework and redesign of orchestration groups or not. If it's based on older builds, definitely look at the new functionality. But saying that the new functionality is a little bit, it's not done and they're still working on it. But the way that we think about it is orchestration groups before were really tied to collections and maintenance windows, and that was really restrictive. And now what we have is orchestration groups are their own object that relate machines together and allow you to see and track and trigger real-time patching on those groups with rules between which machines patch relative to other patches. And the ability to be in the console and see and set up those orchestration groups and then trigger a patch cycle for them and watch the patch cycle go through. This is what we've learned just from running like our own services like Intune, and the need of patching servers really needs to be managed real time. So we are reinvigorated on orchestration groups. There's a ton of functionality in 2002. Give us feedback. We're not done. And I think we have some good momentum here. So let us know what you think.
All right, thanks. I'm going to throw a couple questions at you too, David. We didn't get to practice anything, so these are all going to be impromptu to you. But I'm curious, looking at the current feature set and things you guys have released in the last year or two, what do you think is the most underrated that you think customers could really get more value out of if they spend some time with it?
Oh, that list is long.
Is it long?
I mean, just CM Pivot itself, just the simple scenarios that you could do. I know this week we had a patch vulnerability in DNS, and how quickly people were able to send just a couple lines of text that people could plug into CM Pivot to very quickly understand their exposure and DNS servers in their environment. But I think the power of what we've been doing the last couple of years is you take a feature like CM Pivot and then you piggyback it with CMG, and now you can do real-time management over the internet through firewalls into people's houses over NATs, right? Or taking that functionality and lifting it up into our endpoint management UI via tenant attach, and now I can even trigger it from my phone, right? Because that's platform agnostic. I can run that UI as a web UI on my iPhone. So I can basically, from my house, run a CM query that travels into over Intune, down to SCCM, through CMG, Greg, over to your house and fixes your machine, right? Just the way that a lot of our new innovations, when you piggyback them together, work together in the power of those scenarios, is really interesting. And then something just recently that's got a lot of inertia of us shipping is with our community hub, because now, in just a matter of weeks, you'll be able to go and this week, the equivalent would have been going to community hub and seeing a query for finding and fixing my DNS server so I can load into my product and run it. So I think the connectivity of a lot of our innovations, sometimes it take years, but as a lot of these are coming together and hitting critical mass, the scenarios end to end that some of them allow are really intriguing.
I think so too. I know we've talked about it a couple times. When an end user calls into the service desk, our goal is always to try to do a first resolution. And I think the more tools we can give to that first line, right, in a governed way, right, with approved scripts and things like that, allowing them to reach to an end user device, right, anywhere is a huge thing. And it removes a ton of complexity, right? So if we can get to where a service desk, or a help desk person can say, oh, I see your device online right now. Let me see what I can do, right? And maybe not even have to open a remote session, but just be able to launch some scripts for diagnostics or remediation. I think that's a pretty huge thing. So it's really good to see that coming.
Well, especially this remote world where, at Microsoft, we used to have a help desk, physical desk, where we walk up and get help on our computers, and can't really do that now, right? So enabling a lot of our frontline help desk just to work anywhere over the internet in a secure way is interesting. And, the one, I see you're typing up, the one that I definitely would add there is just tenant attach. Because even without enrolling the clients into Intune, the amount of value that you'll see us add to tenant attach every month for the next 6 months will be pretty intriguing. And couple that with analytics. And Greg, I remember years ago, you and I talking about boot metrics and startup metrics, and now being able to see that across all your devices and get some analysis on it. There's a lot of scenarios that are going to be lined up with our ability to do analytics over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think the analytics are huge, and it's really great to see that coming in because we all want to try to make the experience better for our end users, and I think getting that visibility to understand, what are my top or bottom performing devices, right, or the configurations around those and how that impacts my end user. I think it really allows us as an admin to help get to where we can provide a better experience. I think that's huge. Very nice. Yeah. Let's see. I had another question here. Looking insights on migration of on-premise to Azure cloud, including limitations, challenges. So I think that means moving your infrastructure from on-prem config man, moving it to Azure. I don't know if you have any thoughts or insights on that.
I don't have a lot of details to give. I would say, and sometimes I forget what numbers we're allowed to talk about publicly, but let's say there's 80,000 customers out there for ConfigMan. We are up to about 4,000 of them. So what does that make? About 5% that are running 100% of their infra in Azure. So if you were to lift your infra into Azure, you wouldn't be the first. A lot of people are doing it. I know of 3 companies above 100,000 clients that are doing it, including Microsoft ourselves, as most of our infra is now running in Azure. I don't know if we have. I think we have a pretty good white paper out there on the thoughts and what to take into account. But for the most part, we've architected the product to make sure that it just works. And there's a couple things you want to take into account. There's a difference between CMG and Azure. Azure, you're basically running your infra up there. You might be managing your devices in your CorbNet on-prem. You might want to set up things like, what do we call it, direct route. But there is a combination of also doing CMG So that's the one thing to take into account is you can have your infra up in Azure, and you still might want to manage devices that are on the internet, and you still want to set up CMG to do that. But I think what I do, Greg, is find I think we have a really good white paper about the things to think through, and we could get it posted to this news group.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'll make a note. If anybody happens to have that, feel free to throw it in the chat. I did want to go back and just ask people if you throw something in the chat. Would love to hear how you're using CM Pivot today. If you've used it in the last week or two, or where did it save your butt or make things tons easier. So if you have any examples, feel free to come off mute or throw that in the chat as well if you have anything.
I just used it this past week to find application blocks for 2004. So when the compatibility scan runs and blocks the upgrade, it stamps some things into the registry, and I was able to validate. And so I was looking at DA. I was pulling information from Desktop Analytics for a list of computers. I went into Config Manager. I made a list of those devices, and then was able to run CM Pivot against those to be able to query the registry keys and things. So it was hugely powerful. It was awesome. I was able to show it to my the woman who runs our handles our OneDrive integration, and we're still in the process of migrating. And I was able to pull a list of OneDrive users for her, and she immediately was like, "Oh wait, we have that many people using OneDrive already? Okay." And so yeah, it's amazing how quick and easy it is. It's just you figure out the syntax for it, which is super simple, and bam, go, done.
Yeah,
very nice.
And
good.
The biggest challenge is like even I struggle with the syntax, right? Like I don't know I'm not expert at the syntax. I can do T-SQL and I can do WQL, but the query language that we're using here that we also use in Azure Log Analytics is I still have a little bit of a learning curve for. And that's, I remember earlier this week or last week, I tweeted out and said, just try CM Pivot just so you know it's there, right? Because one day you're going to want to do something really fast. You want to have confidence that you can go do it. We had an issue inside Microsoft. We had Outlook that shipped out this week that had some issues, and we were able to use CM Pivot very quickly to remediate it until the patch came out that fixed it by finding and tweaking some register keys. So it's just a really powerful tool if you know it's there and you know how to use it. Some of the biggest problems is it can solve problems, and my first inclination isn't to use it, is to create a package program and push it out, right? So just getting confidence with it, I think you'll be amazed by the kind of stuff it can do.
I think another thing to point out that I don't know, it wasn't obvious to me. Any classes that you add to your client inventory get added to CM Pivot as items to be able to query from CM Pivot. So if you make, let's say, a custom inventory class, so like we're talking, the thread is talking about OSD. I've got a custom inventory that picks up OSD information, shoves it into WMI. We pick it up with inventory and report on it. Well, it's now a CM Pivot entity that I can query against. And that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's right. You can, so basically what Adam said is you can customize and extend CM Pivot just by the process of extending inventory. And now those things are real-time queryable through CM Pivot.
Yeah, for me, I agree, David. I think it's, use it and understand it so that whenever the use case comes around, you'll immediately know that's your go-to, right? And you're not trying to learn it in an emergency. I think that's a big key to get used to it. I think what I've been trying to encourage internally, we use CM to manage our server space as well. And I know security does a lot of things with Splunk, right? They're scraping a lot of things here and there, blah, blah, blah. I think if we could drive more awareness to security teams of the capabilities of CM Pivot, I think they might actually like it better in some scenarios, right? Because you're actually doing some real-time data aggregation. I think there's a lot of possibilities in the security space for it, and I think just helping to market that internally is something that will add a lot of value and maybe save some money too. Who knows? So there was another question came in, David, on CM Pivot. I lost my mouse, but yeah, okay. So initially, CM Pivot wasn't available at the CAS. Now it is. Are there any limitations or issues using it to CAS versus primary?
I mean, our intention is for there not to be. I don't remember where we're at in our closing our gaps versus what's shipped versus internally. But yeah, CM Pivot should work as well in the CAS as on a standalone primary.
Okay. Yep.
If it doesn't, then those are bugs that you're fixing or already fixed.
Okay. Or send a frown. Yeah. Brian mentions we need RBAC for CM Pivot. That would be nice. And Steve asked, let's see, CM Pivot's query only. I believe that's true, but if anybody can confirm that. I think you're only, run scripts do stuff. Yeah, so run scripts is where you can. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny because CM Pivot and run scripts are actually built on the same technology, and it's the technology that Adam was talking about when he was doing his demo, which is BGB, which is the fast channel.
Fast channel.
So they're basically the same type of technology running over that channel. Just one of them is a query against issues or entities, and the other is a execution of a script. And this allows both, set and get basically of anything. But
if you delegate rights out where somebody can do CM Pivot, at least they can't do harm on a device, I think.
Yeah. And, Brian, you're saying we need more RBAC. We have evolved that a lot. We've worked with a lot of companies because one of the powerful scenarios for CM Pivot is really around what we call security hunting. But for many big orgs, the people that run security and the people that run management are different politically. And a lot of times they don't like to talk to each other or work together. So we built a model where CM Pivot and run scripts can be delegated to admins outside of the console and run separate for exactly that reason. Now, it's more kind of a role-based model and approval per scripts as opposed to a partition model where different people have access to different clients. Because CM Pivot, the reason it's called Pivot is when you're hunting, you're actually kind of looking at results and requerying against those results, and it's a very iterative process. And so we thought about RBAC, but it's more role-based than it is kind of segregation or silo-based. But we're open to more feedback. So, for those of you who don't know, you can run CM Pivot separate from the console for exactly this reason, so that you can have people have CM Pivot rights with almost no rights to do anything interesting in the console. But if there's more ways that we need to think about this security model, give us feedback.
Great.
And just to, basically, CM Pivot is designed to look at some of the products out there that do more real-time querying. And once we got parity with a lot of those capabilities, we went to some of our customers and said, oh, you can use this instead of that. And like, no, we can't, because we don't want our security guys in our console. So that's exactly why we invested in this kind of security model where CM Pivot can run separate. So basically, you almost can have conceptually like two different products running on the same infrastructure now because CM Pivot runs out of band from the console.
Yeah, I'm curious if anybody is, if you're leveraging CM Pivot or if you've delegated that access to security teams or others, feel free to throw that in the chat. Or if you have reasons why you haven't, that would be great to know as well. Okay, another one for you, David. So I know you mentioned, at least I think you mentioned a little bit about coming up features, and I'm curious how your world has changed, right, with everything that's gone on with COVID and remote employees. And have you had much of a pivot internally on feature focus and your 12-month plan, things like that? How's this impacted with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things changed, and still yet a lot of things stay the same. Definitely, we had both a short-term and a long-term kind of questioning of, do we need to do things that we weren't already doing because of an increased work from home focus? And we did react to that, which is good. there's a couple, for example, CMG things that have been on the back burner that were more brought into active development. I'm not making any announcements, but there is active coding and active customer validation going on, remote control over CMG, for example, as well as CMG for CSPs. So I think, we always have thousands of things that my team could or should be doing according to customers, and they're all good. It did bunch or nudge some of the priorities at the top of the list for us short term. The other thing too is just it did underscore that when it came to tenant attach and using Intune and ConfigMan together with one kind of web UI, I really like the way that when Adam showed it, you could see, ConfigMan devices there and Intune devices there and co-management devices there. It's almost like a master device list for a company. It almost doesn't matter what was managing it. It's going to show up in that list. And then the capabilities to manage it can be started from there. And that, we've seen an acceleration of customers being interested in adopting that. And I think it iterates kind of on the right path about, positioning ConfigMan and Intune not as either or, but as better together. And they both do things that in some ways the other can't, that they're good at. And so integrating those is kind of the right path. And this acceleration into work from home kind of created an urgency in the world for digital transformation per se. And so some companies are pushing forward in ways maybe they've been reluctant to before. And I think when they get through it, in many ways, they're better off. But yeah, it's some things have changed for sure. Some prioritizations have changed. Some how we work together with each other has changed. But in the big picture of things, still the product that we work on, the work we do, is important. A lot of the feedback we had even before for customers is still important, and we're working on it.
Yeah, I think that's what we found as well. I mean, even a lot of things were just back burner, right? They were on the list, but just weren't prioritized to support this type of scenario. But definitely brought it to the front, which was great. So I think that's good. And John, welcome back. It's good to see you. He was here. Is he still there? There he is.
I had no idea I dropped.
I
had
Did you give a whole presentation?
Didn't tell me, apparently.
Oh man, we all had a blip, but everybody came back fairly quick. But yeah, maybe since you were presenting, maybe you didn't see it. I
did the whole thing. It was fantastic. Apparently, I talked to myself for 40 minutes.
Yeah. So let me ask. So I know we have at 11:20. I got my schedule up here. We have collective presenting 11:20. We could do a couple things. We could switch back if you'd like for a while, or if you want to do some over the round table. We've done some of that now. Completely up to you.
I do have to duck out for a little bit, and I can try to come back about 12:45.
Okay.
And I can just scan through content and people can ask, because it'll probably be easier to just touch on the points people want.
I think that's fine. I'll stop sharing, but David, really thank you a lot for everything. And if you're around, you're more than welcome to join us at 12:30. If not, that's cool too. But if anybody has additional questions, keep those coming. We'll make a list and we'll talk about them at the 12:30 time. But for now, we'll switch back to John. And yeah, we can see, if we don't have enough time to cover everything, we can set up additional time or whatever we need to do there. So thanks again, David. Really appreciate it. All for you, John.
Cool. Thanks for filling time for me, David. All right. So, all right. Let me share my screen. So I have a few minutes now, and then, like I said, I can come back at 12:45 if that's good for everyone. Hold on. Too many windows open. Oh, it looks like am I not presenter anymore?
Oh yeah, I need to make you presenter again. Sorry.
That's okay. It's probably when I got booted. Did everyone get booted or just me?
I think everybody.
Oh, okay, so maybe it was a weird Teams hiccup in general, because usually I've been kicked out of meetings before. It's weird, and it told me.
Yeah, I got a little pop up, and then it almost immediately rejoined. So weird.
All right, so there we go, share. All right. So it was great. I did make it through the whole thing. It was fantastic. Thanks everyone for listening. My neighbors probably love me. No, just kidding. So I can come back at, like I said, 12:45, and I'll just kind of go through the high level. So I did a recap, and I'd like to touch on, I can touch on this one right now because this is something that might interest you guys, but I don't think it will affect you too much. And it's this feature called Apps on Demand that we're introducing. What this is it's a way for us to reduce the size of the Windows media and also reduce the amount of network bandwidth utilization to Windows devices for apps that are not frequently used. So you'll see a handful of apps that will, and this will probably happen in the 20H2 media, I'm sure they'll call it 2009, that'll move to what we call a stub app. And that app will have very minimal footprint on the device. Like, if an app's 100 meg, it might be like 15 meg, but it'll have enough to make it feel to the user that the app's there. So if the app requires, a protocol activation or a file type association, the tile will be there. It'll have a real app presence to the user, but if they're never using the app, they won't know any difference. And then the first time the user uses the app, it'll actually launch. They'll see a small UX, and it'll pull the rest of the app down from the store. So again, this is something that's designed to kind of minimize updates for things that aren't used. Maybe you keep a few apps there that are low used that the users may or may not use. This is the list of expected apps. So I think talking to most enterprise customers, most folks actually remove a handful of these apps. The only one that's kind of there is alarms that I've heard mixed things if it gets removed or not. The other one's OneNote, but I hear most people manage that with their Office installation, so that kind of makes sense. The nice thing from a platform perspective is we are making sure that you guys have all the controls that you need to kind of own these. So you can report if anything's in a sub state. You can do that from the CSP enables it, or the WMI bridge. So there's the WMI interface that you can go and script it. You can override the state. So if you do want to say, for example, keep alarms there and you want it available for all users because they might not have internet access, you can force the update to a full. And you can do that like in your disconnected environment. You just download the package from the store for business, and then you just push it with an extra parameter, and that'll go and force it to the full state, and it won't revert back to the stub at an OS upgrade. So this is something, just kind of awareness. Again, we've been talking to customers about this in general. Most of these apps that we're trying to do this for, generally more of the consumer apps. I mean, I think the general feedback enterprise are saying, can you just pull them out of our enterprise image? We're looking to do that longer term, but I felt like just give some awareness to this group here, let people know what's going on in anticipation of that. You'll probably hear, hopefully, me talk more about that at Ignite. And then I'll talk about one other thing, and then kind of go from there. For folks that may still have some down-level operating systems, this is launched since Ignite. We did launch MSIX Core. That's our down-level uncontainerized way to reuse your MSIX package. So hopefully most folks are on Windows 10 and using one of the current Windows 10 versions. But if you do have some straggling devices and you don't want to have to have two different installer types, you can go ahead and deploy this MSIX Core redistributable in your environment. We'll take the MSIX, we'll actually deploy it a little bit more like an MSI. It'll be uncontainerized. It'll potentially have some WinRAR on your system, all the good things that MSI offers for you. And then we did doc some best practices on if you're using ConfigMan on how to do the deployments. It didn't make sense for us or the ConfigMan team to go really do integrating in the console because, again, this is a little bit more low usage scenario. Most people used it as kind of like a safety net, but we wanted to make sure there wasn't a blocker for folks that were especially building new apps that were leveraging MSIX. So those are a couple of the quick high-level things, and then I can come back and the topics I was going to talk about was the packaging tool. Just give people an update on that. Some things we're doing to make code signing easier. Talk a little bit about some of the PowerShell scripting stuff, and then I can fly through the what's coming ahead, which I think will be the most interesting and where we're kind of going with MSIX and some app deployment stuff. So if that sounds cool, I can just take a quick survey before like at 12:45, and we can figure out which parts to kind of dive into.
Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds good. Yeah, when you come back, we can pick that up. And yeah, if anybody has any specifics there you'd like, definitely road ahead would be good. But if there's others, feel free to throw those in the chat, and we can do another check too whenever you come back. So
yeah, and if you guys have follow-ups, just hit me up on Twitter, and I do my best to kind of to answer stuff there. So I'm more than happy to, if you guys have some extra stuff and I'm eating up too much of your Q&A, happy to chat with you guys more offline.
cool, sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, John. Really appreciate it. Sorry
Man,
we got
I'm really
disconnected.
sorry about that. I'm more sorry. I really did talk for a half hour, like my machine.
We're sorry that you talked for a half hour without anybody listening. So
No, I think my neighbor heard me, so I
oh
think
well,
he knows a lot about app deployment now.
that's good. That's good.
Cool.
All right, good.
I'll see
Well,
you
thanks.
guys in an hour or so.
Yeah, we'll talk to you in a little bit. All right, let me share another slide or two here before we take our next break. Let's see. All right, so back on track here. So yeah, what time is it? It is 11:11. So we're going to take a 9-minute break, and when we come back, we'll have Jerry from Collective give us his presentation on maximizing content delivery. I did put the survey up here again. I'll take a look. We'll do a quick look at where we are with that survey, but feel free to throw more information in there. And if you want to see more of what John mentioned, you can throw that in there, or feel free to throw that in the chat as well. We'll definitely have him back, and we'll have him take up some of that table topic time. But definitely come up with any of your thoughts, questions, and things like that we can bring together during the roundtable. So now we'll take an 8-minute break. I'll throw the timer up here, and we'll see you back here soon. I see Keith watching me scan that huge monitor. It is funny if you do a full right to left. Luckily, most of my work days, I don't think I have to do that so frequently. But yeah, I'll need a neck massage when the day's over if I keep it up.
How big is it, Greg?
49, 49 inches. Let me see if I can turn my camera around. You guys can get an experience of it. There. It's not quite as curvy as what it looks like in the camera. Let me see if I can put something in here for perspective. Well, you can see an echo dot at the very bottom there. That's what is in the middle of the monitor. So yeah, there's a lot of real estate there. I played around. I know Brian has, Brian talked me into it. There's the Power Toys from for Windows. I've kind of played around with making it one wide 49 or making it two 27s. My biggest challenge, I really like having one wide 49, but my only challenge then is when I'm sharing desktops, because I can't really share desktops at that point. So
Right.
I find myself going back to two 27s basically, so I can share one desktop at a time. So that's my only hang up, unless somebody has a way to make that better. I share like, an app kind of thing, but it seems like I jump in and out of apps a lot. So I share a lot of desktop.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question, Andrew. When we're going to move to VR monitors, I kind of wondered if when you fly, remember those catalogs you used to get on the airplane for, what were those things called where you could buy all the weird swag in those catalogs? Well, that wasn't swag, but all those things. But the glasses, right, where you could watch videos, Sky Mall, that's it. Yeah, I actually tried to propose this once internally that. If we had glasses that could just connect to your laptop, let me turn off the laptop monitor. Because think about it, when you're on a plane, it's hard to even open the screens. You could even just leave it clamshell closed practically, still get your keyboard. But if you had the glasses where you could see the monitor, to me, I thought that was a great idea. But nobody else thought it was a great idea, or was already invented and I just didn't realize it. But I see a little bit of the Steven conversation, but I didn't follow enough of it to go. I see it looks like Brian and him are having a conversation there. And just to check, I don't know, Jerry, you might be on break, but I did promote you to presenter, so hopefully you're good to go there whenever the time comes.
So Greg, in case you're interested, we've discovered that the bug we're seeing is actually fixed with the latest cumulative update for the hotfix rollup that came out for Config Manager. So yay, might be doing an expedited change. Fix that.
Oh, the bug that you had in your demo?
No, the one that my server guy called me right before we got on.
Oh, gotcha.
I have almost 100,000 backlogged MIFs that, I mean, I've got like 80 gigs of bad MIFs now. So
Fun.
yeah, I think we might be doing an upgrade today.
We should probably do a war story session. I don't know if I have enough information in my memory to remember, but thinking of backlogged things on site server or bad MIFs and things like that, I bet we all have some stories on that one we could share.
Yeah, I think so. How many things have you screwed up?
Yeah.
I have some good ones. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk to them about them outside Microsoft yet.
We can always
What's
talk
that
about
called?
that other guy
Like,
we
you
know.
have to let 7 years pass.
Yeah. I have one that was more than 7 years ago where I accidentally and you know, Greg, MVP, blah blah blah, we're all human. I screwed up a collection and deployed Office to a lot of servers one time. That wasn't a pretty day, but it was a good experience, helping reset me and I think all of us, right? Hopefully we've had the less than fatal error to help us remember how powerful this tool is, because yeah, we can all do a lot there. Doug says his retail days caused him trauma. I had some trauma too.
We had a good one where the maintenance windows got removed from the servers, and they all started rebooting during a patch. I think someone on our team, it wasn't me, I promise, did something and screwed them up, and yeah, that was a good time.
Oh wow. I had an in back with, I think it was Windows 2000. We had a job that you could kick off to do a check disk way back when, like a check disk, I don't know, remember / whatever, and we had it disabled, but it was targeting a large collection, and somebody wanted to use that job and didn't realize it, and they removed the disable, and it, like in the middle of the day, rebooted systems and did a check disk, and you know, people were down for I don't know how many minutes, but wasn't pretty. We had somebody add all x64-bit devices to our servers collection. That's a good one. Maybe we should do that. We should have an anonymous survey. Yeah, stories from the field. Everybody can submit them anonymously, and then we can talk about them that way.
I was talking to a guy yesterday. He constantly has these types of stories about just how crazy the people in his organization are, and he said that he had they were getting a DDoS attack on one of their workstations or something. This whole group was complaining about it, and he's sort of digging in. It turns out that they had installed their own VPN client and had it open to the world. It wasn't. I don't understand how they would have done that, but somehow they had installed extra junk on their machines and were just doing it to themselves. Like, you need to start your own Twitter account just for your organization. Like,
yep.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I see Brian there. Yeah, remember we used to call it slow moving software until you had that one time when it wasn't, right? And that's what I used to always say. SMS is slow until you don't want it to be, and then you suddenly realize how fast and powerful the thing is. We were in the ConfigMan 2012 tap back in the days, and a name I won't mention, who was on my team, accidentally did a client push to like 30,000 systems when we were trying to target like 300. So that was a good day too. That was good times.
I know it's good for us. We loved that stress during tap.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a few instances with ConfigMan where I get pale-faced very quickly because of something either I did or wasn't quite sure if I did and had to go back and look. Uh, One time, talk about testing and testing and not testing in production. I actually deleted the SMS collection class from WMI. I did find that a MOF comp quickly restores that, but in the day and in the moment, that was a really bad thing. Wow, we got people chatting now. Yeah, we should have. We could have we should have a conversation just on this. I'd love your thoughts. Maybe I'll add that to the end of the day survey. Yeah, do we want an anonymous session, or do we want people to step up and if people are willing to step up, would love to have you talk about anything that's not criminal get you in trouble at this point. So yeah, heart stopping. Yeah, that's what, maybe we'll have a heart stopping session or something like that, because we've probably all had at least one. So it's good to know we're not alone, huh? We're all in this together. Yeah,
And
thank you.
if you want to go eat lunch and stuff and not watch, that's cool too. So
Yeah.
Gary says he wants some jokes. I got nothing, man. Nothing.
Yeah.
Greg, can you make me presenter again?
Oh yeah, will do. Let me find you. I'm curious, others with Teams. There's a lot of nice functionality, but things aren't quite where they need to be to make it flow, like flipping between people and chats, or, going back and looking at a chat and seeing people and all those little things. Hopefully they'll continue to build on and improve. All right, all you, Adam.
Ryan, I'm not giving you control of my computer, man. All right. Well, it's probably a bad time to be chewing gum. Let me get. All right. So, hi, I'm Adam again. Okay, so this is going to be a quick abridged kind of intro to Power BI and things. So some of the chat that was, and I'm going to have the chat out to the side here. If you guys want to throw some specific questions in that I can try to target. The one I was shooting for was, I think Steven asked about kind of a intro to Power BI, getting started with Power BI, and then there were some questions about Power BI for OSD type things, and so that's the kind of stuff I've got some of those things kind of in the can here that I can talk through a little bit. So first, I'll at least say that I'm not trying to promote products, except this is a paid product that I wrote for System Center dudes. So, but it's an example of one of the things you can do for Power BI. This is our OSD dashboard, and it takes all of the, yeah, I'll send you a check, Greg, for the, yeah, I got you. Here, let's just do this. All right, there you go. All right, so this is a generic OSD dashboard now. So it brings in all of the OSD information. None of this is custom anything in your, this is all native. Uses native data inside the config manager database to monitor all of your task sequence information. And the things that are great that I really love about Power BI is the interactive functionality between the visuals. So I can click on a single item, and then contextually it will filter other items inside of the report. So I can say, oh, these machines timed out, and it will filter them down. And then here I can actually drill through to see the detail on the items that failed for that particular day. And then even then I can drill through some more. And by the way, this is totally production data. So I can drill through onto this actual device and see, well, it doesn't have any data. So it probably just started and timed out and nothing happened. So as you can see, very quickly, able to drill through into all of the details about the report. I mean, about the deployments. And so that's at least just kind of give you a quick picture of what you're shooting for with Power BI, is to have some dynamic reportability that you can then use for any sorts of things. So like one of the things we do with this item here is if we right click on this one and drill through, we can go to the step details and we can find all of our failed steps. And so say, okay, these machines are all failing on this step, and here's how long it took on each of those steps or whatever. So all of this data, though, is just using native config manager data. For the most part, it's even just using just the SQL or just the tables themselves. However, the task sequence summary is quite a bear on building out the queries for that. And I will tell you, if you want to build this stuff yourself, there is a, I'll have to think of it and put a link later, but there's if somebody thinks of it, there was an OSD report that, here it is, Larson wrote, and this is really where the basis for where my report started, and then kind of built from there, and then he's got a different one. So this is all running in SSRS, and I took all of this and converted it into Power BI, and I enhanced the queries and added some more functionality and stuff. But this is the the SSRS version of it. If you wanted to take this and try to use it to create your own version of a dashboard. But so this is the advanced, been there, kind of get there kind of thing. Here's a different one that I haven't done anything with yet. I built this for Mike Marable the other day because we were chatting about feature updates, and I wanted, so we collect some custom inventory for feature updates, and so I've got a custom inventory class that reads specific registry keys that get stamped by feature updates, and then I essentially can get a build history over time for all of my devices. So every entry here is the date that the OS was installed on a particular device, and a device may be represented more than one time here. So I could have a device that has been on 7601, so that's Windows 7, and then we go to 1803, and we got 1809 and 1909. So I could have a device that has hit each of those OSs over time. And if I look at this one, this is a different view of the same data showing the relationship at a point in time for how many of a particular build we had, at a particular date based on inventory. So those are some things that I've worked on that I've been able to build out. But let me switch over here to show you let's talk about just kind of getting started with Power BI. So Power BI has a couple of flavors. So there is a Power BI desktop, which is what we've got here. There's also a Power BI desktop for Power BI reporting server, or Power BI report server, reporting services. It takes the place of SSRS reporting server that you normally would have for your config manager environment. So if you were doing, if you have reports enabled, and you should, doing SSRS reports inside the console, now you can do Power BI report server integration, and there's some cool stuff there. However, the issue is that your Power BI desktop version, thank you, Brian, and the server version that you have installed need to match. And if you're using the Windows Store version of the Power BI desktop, like you would normally, that's what I use, it updates monthly. The reporting server and desktop versions update like quarterly. So you may find that you build a report that doesn't work in a newer environment, you may build a report with newer features in Power BI desktop that you can't upload using the reporting server version of desktop because it doesn't have all the same features turned on yet. So just know that there's some nuance, some difference there. I recommend using the Windows Store version and pushing it through Config Manager. I've got a blog on how to do store apps from Config Manager, but that's definitely how I would deploy it. If I go into monitoring here, I should have Power BI reports enabled now. And I think Config Manager has released like 2 sample reports. I don't have any reports in here yet, but this is what it looks like once you get it enabled. So that's kind of what you get there. Power BI Desktop itself is free. You can use it. You just are not supposed to share reports that you build or anything like that. It's supposed to be, you can use this for you. It's personal use, single use type thing. The moment you create reports and share them or upload them, in order to even upload them to Power BI Service, which is the web interface for it to share with other people, you have to have licensing for it. And I'm not going to get into any of the licensing bits or any of that stuff, but just know that the report server needs licensing, and I think that requires SQL Enterprise or Power BI Premium, I think, and all that stuff. So you can read up on how that stuff works. But before I run out of time, I'll show you actually how to do stuff. So simply, once you open up Power BI, you have the front end of the reporting engine, and then you've got the back end, which uses Power Query. And if you've used Power Query in Excel, it's the same Power Query. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and go to that side. So I'm going to go to the transform data, which will take me to Power Query. I realize my display resolution might be just a little bit tinier than it was before. Hopefully everybody can see. And then I'm going to just say new source, and I'm going to choose SQL Server. And my server name is, I'm going to put a parameter in for it. And this is nice because you want to put in aliases. These parameters will create parameter/alias will let you reuse this report, and specifically if you plan to share this report with another organization or something, you will want to put those in, and then you can save it as a Power BI template, PBIT file, and anything that you have parameterized will prompt the person who's, when they first launch the report, it will prompt them for the values. So all I'm doing is I just created a database and a server parameter. And then earlier I showed you select star from VR system. And so we'll do that. And that's a basic SQL query. But in my Charlotte user group demo, I promised I would show you how to build Power BI reports with no code. But so I'll show you some techniques on that as well. So it's as simple as this. I've now told it to query with the basic SQL command, and if you stole this out of a Power BI, out of an SSRS report from somewhere or some other code you found on the internet, or if you know how to write SQL, I'm sorry, some people may. I'm assuming some folks don't, and so want to make sure that you know this is accessible for regardless of your skill level, basically. So I'm going to try this again now, and I'm going to do new data source, and I'm going to use my same parameter that I had before for server and parameter for database, and I'm just going to do import this time and not select the advanced mode where I type in the query. And what this is going to do is connect to the database, and it's going to list all of my tables and views and allow me to choose from them. As you can see, there are quite a few in Config Manager, so it takes a little while to get familiar with what's in there. It's hard to dig around in there if you don't know what you're looking for. So I'm going to do VR user now. So since I already have system, and it's just as simple as this. It's just a visual GUI. And you saw me do this earlier with admin service. Same thing. This is how you pull the data in. There are additional ways to pull in data. So I already showed you the OData version. You can pull in a web page and scrape the web, which got some stuff where I've worked with that, pulling in like your OS build history and things like that. One of the other things I'd like to show you in regards to that if you've got questions as we go here, let me know. Certainly happy to we need to do that instead. Okay, so if I go into reports, you'll notice that endpoint analytics is a new thing that I think Morris is going to cover this later. But endpoint analytics uses log analytics to store its data. And sorry, that's not, is that true? I think that's true. So if I go into log analytics here, log analytics uses the same Custo query language that the CM pivot uses. Sorry, I have a separate scope here. I'm going to switch this over. Normally you wouldn't have to do this, but I've got multiple that's not it. Multiple places. So once you've configured desktop analytics, you would then have access to the data in desktop analytics. So M365 analytics, and you go to MA device. Well, I've already got it here, so I can just, so that's the whole query is MA device, and you need to make sure you select the right time range. There's some tricks for Custo with the time there, being able to get the max time so you don't get duplicates of records and things. But essentially, that's how you get, this is the same as VR system and querying for a computer. Also, I want to bring that into my Power BI. And so I can just do export to Power BI mQuery. It'll give me a text file. When I open that text file, it gives me instructions. And then it gives me all the data that I need to create the query. So I can take that query, go back into Power Query, new blank query, advanced editor, delete what's there, paste this in, and you'll see it has the query listed. It has my time span of 7 days. Now, because I have a time span of 7 days, I'm going to get duplicates, but that's a whole different challenge, and then we don't have time to cover that. But specifically from log analytics, just know that you will get duplicates on your data. It's just part of the deal. Okay, so now I've got a device from there, and then even more so, you can do the Intune data warehouse if you've enabled it. It uses the Microsoft Graph to pull data, and so I could go in here and do an OData feed just like the admin service, and can pull this data. There's articles on how to configure, how to do this, how to configure the Intune data warehouse as well as how to integrate it in. So I'll let you go look that up. But so once I have it, I can do devices. And so now I'm pulling data from Intune as well. So I've got 3 different data sources providing me, and if I added admin service, that'd be a 4th, providing me with data. And 3 of them, I didn't even have to type any queries really. Even inside log analytics, I didn't really query that. I just drug over the entity that I wanted to query from. So anyway, okay, so now we've got the data. So we'll close and apply that. And then so now you get to manipulate the data on the front end. Sorry, this is definitely a truncated thing. Just know that there's way more that you can do for sure with this data. There's a bunch of data manipulation things that you can do on the back end as well. But what we want to do next is just relate the tables together. Sorry, I've forgotten there's a bug with this data that I need to fix. So it'll let me demonstrate a thing I need to demonstrate anyway. Okay, so if I go to my query, I know that my Azure AD device IDs of null and zeros are going to break this, so I'm filtering them out for a minute. And so if I close and apply, well, while we're here, I'll just show you because I feel like this is worthwhile. So you see how you have build ext. I can select that column, and I can tell it I want to add a column from, or sorry, that's not the one, that's the other example. I want to split this column. So split by delimiter. And so I'm going to split it into 4 columns using the period, and it already knew that the period was it. And so you can customize how you want it to split out. And now I'm going to get, now I've broken out my OS build information into meaningful, usable components now. Another thing that you can do is, like, let's say I want to get my device type. I want to classify like servers and workstations and things. Well, this is one that most folks are probably familiar with. You'd normally do like SQL case where where operating system name and version like or like server or like workstation. In this case, I'll select this column. I'll do column from examples from selection. And so then just name this. Then I can type in server because I want to tell it that that's the value that I want here, and it's going to use AI to determine, oh, cool, I think I figured out what you want. Anything that's gray is its guess. If you want to help it out, you can double click in that field and turn it black, and then that will say, I know that this is the value I want from this type of field, and so then it does the math to sort out what it wants to do there. So now I've got a custom device type field, and I still haven't written any SQL. Okay, so I'm going to close and apply, take that back into the front end, and now I want to relate my data together. Now, you kind of need to know what's in the data and know how it relates together, but and I kind of do. So you can see I have Azure AD device ID. Sorry, it's taking a minute to finish flying. Okay, so we have Azure AD device ID, and we have AAD device ID from this other table. So we can drag those guys over. Oh, come on. So if you've ever done this like in SQL or something, you certainly can. And then you always want to change this relationship to be a both direction. Not always, but it allows the child to filter the parent when you go to do filtering and things. So we want this to be our primary table that we're working from. And then this is the primary key here that we want to link with. So config manager client ID is going to go with the SMS unique identifier. And I only know this because I've painstakingly dug through all of this stuff. So it takes a little bit to figure out the right relationship and things, but done it a couple times. Okay, so we create that relationship. And we're going to ignore the user one because we don't have anything to link that over to. And so now we've got our relationships. And the relationships are important because it's what allows the tables. Remember in the first part I showed you how to relate or how you could drill through. Well, being able to drill through is dependent on relationships being present. So without the relationships, it's not really easy to, or things won't filter on each other and stuff. And I stupidly did not name these, so I assume query 1 is the one that from VR system. I can't seem to keep it open. There we go. Okay, so if I just drag this in, I should have some. So that's my device name. There we go. And I made that custom column called device type. So let me add that guy in. Okay. And let me go ahead and add some data in from these other locations. So devices, this is from the Intune data warehouse. So I can pull in, let's see the enrolled date time. Let's see if that's a thing. There we go. So you notice that's kind of a weird thing. It broke out my date. So I could come here and change my date to be, instead of a date hierarchy, I can just have the date time itself that it enrolled. So you can see how now, if I get blanks over here, that means I've got devices in one side that are not in the other side, and that's okay. So that means I've got Intune only devices that aren't in Config Manager. So you kind of get how you can put those things together. Well, so then it's a question of, well, how do I make pretty pictures? So let's go back to that device type that we made. So if we drag device type out here by itself, we can go over here and change our visuals. Let's do a donut. And now we need to count it. So this is, if you've ever made a chart in Excel, it's the same functionality. So we want to count our distinct values of resource, or the count of resource ID, and we want to do distinct. And so there we go. Now I've got workstations and server count. But let's say I want to find out what's another thing we want that we can pull just out of the VR system table. Oh, the OS build, right? So we broke out all of the OS. So we got the build version. So that third value, I think, was the key that we liked there. So if we grab that one and we put it into a pie as the legend, and then we go and drag the resource ID in as the count of values. There we go. So now I have a breakdown of my OS build version, or the I don't know which the whatever document you're reading will tell you that that's a whole different, each time it's a different thing, but let's call it the version. So that's my build version that I've got on that. And so now I can click this guy and it will filter that down. So, so all of my servers are on 1809, but then I have some of my workstations are on 1904, but then some of my workstations are not. So you can see how you can quickly put those together. So let's take this chart, this table we made here. That's not very pretty, but get the idea. Let's go make it slightly pretty. So put a style of bold header. There we go. And this is how we do the drill through. So we want to drag an item here that it will use as the filter. So any table that uses this in it, that uses this value in it, property, will light up with a drill through opportunity if it uses, so this one uses the same resource ID in it as a item. So now we have drill through enabled. So before I drill to it, I'll show you, if you don't build the drill throughs, you can still see the data by doing show data point as table, or and so it will drill through and use the full underlying table and just give you raw data. And to me, this is what makes Power BI super powerful, is that I didn't summarize any of this data to bring it in. And so when someone asks me, well, what devices are these? Well, the data is there. We're just counting it and summarizing it in a nice, pretty way on the front end. So if I go and I say, well, I want to find out these 4 devices that are on this version of the OS, and right click and drill through, and hopefully if I did it right, and that did not work right. So I did something wrong there. Not sure why that didn't work. Let's try this one instead. Yeah, okay. Messed up something there. Let's drill through this one. There we go. I think it's because the servers aren't in Intune or something, and so it didn't like them. But anyway, so it's trial and error going back and forth, but that's the basics of getting started with Power BI. I know it was fast. This is recorded. Go watch it in playback in slow motion, but hopefully it gives you some ideas on all the ways you can bring data in. I am by no means a Power BI expert. I just have beat my head against the wall with this for so long that I at least have produced some semi-meaningful things. But there is so much. There's some great resources like 2 Guys in a Cube is a great YouTube channel. There's lots and lots and lots of folks producing some super good quality content for Power BI that are out there. So the Power BI community, like they have a web, forum and everything that's really great. Definitely highly recommend going and checking that out. So the more you get into it, the more you'll learn SQL, the more you'll learn Kusto. I mean, you'll learn Power Query, DAX. DAX is a thing, like DAX. I didn't even get into measures and things. So world of possibilities. The best thing you can do is go and find free Power BI reports that you can download and go and tear them up and figure out what you can dig into and find and learn from them, because that's what I'm doing. For a lot of it, that's where I started. And SSRS reports, take those and convert them. Now, one word of caution that I'll say on that is that the thing that I attempt to do when I'm building out my data structure, and I'll show you on this report instead, is I try to keep, just like I was talking about summarizing your data and everything, I try to bring in the data in as raw of a format as I can, and these aren't going to show me because I'm not on the device where it needs auth to be able to query the table structure. But I'm bringing in, like, if you go just query v advertisement, I'm trying to get v advertisement from SQL in as original a state as possible without filtering and doing trying to leave the data as original as possible, so that you can then manipulate it inside of Power BI and move it and work it inside of Power BI, instead of like taking 5 tables, querying them together, producing 5 columns, and saying, here's my data. Well, I can't do anything with it. You've summarized it, and now the moment you do that, you lose all of the underlying bits that go with it. There is no data there to tie that information back to. So summarize it as little as possible, mess with it as little as possible, bring it in a raw format into Power BI, and then manipulate your data so that the other benefit there is that it really lets you only have to do it once. So if I bring in VR system once, then I can use it for any number of views that I want to use it for. I've got VR system. So anyway, hopefully that kind of makes sense. So I've got like 1 minute before the roundtable if anybody has any other questions, or any questions at all. So here's an example. So like just bring V advertisement in just like that and create a table with it in Power BI, instead of trying to just select like the 2 columns that we're going to use, because maybe someday you might care about the other columns. All right. Well, we're doing the roundtable next. So if you got any questions that come up, just let me know. That's it.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Greatly appreciated. Let's take another 8-minute break. Let me share out my screen again. And here we go. We'll take an 8-minute break, and I think we might have another drawing when we return. Yep. So we'll take an 8-minute, and then we'll get into roundtable. So feel free, one last chance, if you want to submit any roundtable topics. You see the URL there, and we'll be back in 8 to continue. Thank you.
All right, let me skim ahead.
The biggest questions I usually get is like, do we deploy IV or do we deploy MSIX? It's always the more popular one I've seen.
Yeah, do you deploy IV or do you deploy MSIX? Well, it's a good question. Right now, especially if you're on something like 2004 or later, definitely MSIX. There's still some limitations prior to 2004, like services support, which is a little constraint for people that might have that in AppV. And I'll talk about a couple last things we're doing to do parity with people that are kind of heavy AppV users. The other cool thing is for folks that are potentially looking into WVD, MSIX will give you the MSIX app attach feature, which I don't cover in here, but it's the dynamic attaching of apps without having to go and install them, without having to stream them. So it really helps with fast availability of apps where you don't have to either load them all into your images or hammer your network streaming bits over and give your users a poor experience. So a couple of benefits over AppV, and we've really been focusing one on just making it a core client technology. That's why there's no license behind it. It's free. It's available on all the platforms, as well as making it optimal for data center for people that were doing things like VDI, and as we move into the WVD experience. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I'll kind of talk about things that'll probably happen in the next year or so. Obviously the Windows hasn't been super. We know when things are going to ship, but we don't always know when features will make those OSs. So these are things we'll just start coding up, and as soon as they're available, they'll get plugged into an OS. Caveat: I'm assuming there's some 20H2 release or 2009. None of this will make that because I believe that's following that LCU model, like 1909 did. So these would be beyond this upcoming fall release. So a lot of our time, my team spends a lot of time with, tap customers, early adopter customers, things like that. And, as folks have been moving to MSIX, there's still some things from the Win32 world that may have been deemed less important or, maybe not needed, but we've really been focusing on trying to address those to make sure they're not gaps. And these are things that we're going to make sure that are available as native in the MSIX platform. The first one is just making sure that we can easily launch apps with parameters. I've talked in many different sessions about this thing we have called the package support framework. You can use that and bring that functionality everywhere that MSIX is, but it still requires you to add some DLLs into your package and add a JSON file and go and configure that. So it's great. It unblocked the scenario very early on, but we want it to be native. We want developers to build it natively. If you're repackaging, we want it to just be native without having to do all this configuration. So we're going to actually bring that in as a platform level feature. So you'll see that being lighting up pretty shortly here. I'd say it'd be hopefully an insider builds by the end of the year. The other thing, and this one could be actually used from IT pros. We do see it a little bit more as the LOB developer play, but I don't want to constrain it one way or another. And we're looking at how we could loosen up HKCU to potentially be unvirtualized and maybe do tracking of keys that we unvirtualize so that we can do the cleanup and the make sure we don't have WinRot. And the real case here is we do know a lot of line of business apps share files and share registry entries to do interprocess communication or IPC. So as we've been converting folks over and they've been doing things, we naturally don't always want to rewrite apps. Even if they're interactive development, we don't want to always have to spend a bunch of time updating those apps, right? So we're looking at how we can kind of loosen the flexibility, specifically in the HKCU area, because it's restricted to the user and not changing the state of other users, and really kind of helping out there.
Hey, John, we're still seeing your first slide, MSIX update. Just wanted to make sure.
Nope, that was not it. Let me go back again. Apparently, I do not know how to use Teams at all.
We're all learning.
Very sad for me. Let's try it again. Can you see my road ahead slide?
I see MSIX update.
Really weird. Okay, hold on. Let me unshare. Oh, hold on. That's what I'm doing. Wrong one. There we go. All right, you can see my screen. There we go.
There we go. The road ahead.
Yeah, I think I was doing the share of the PowerPoint as a whole to you guys. So
yeah.
You can flip through it. Yep. Okay. So this is the one I was on. I just talked through the first two bullets there. Hopefully that made sense without the slide. I'm guessing that didn't hold you back too far. The last one I think is kind of one of the ones that it's very kind of cosmetic, but it seems to hit really well with enterprises. And it was just the lack of folders in the start menu. For some silly reason, people at Microsoft, probably our shell team, less me, really wanted to get rid of things like folders because we thought they were archaic. Customers have really stood up and said, hey, you might think they're silly or strange. We rely on them. It's a great way for us to group. It makes it easier to help users navigate. So you'll see start menu folders be able to come back into the MSIX mix. So if you want to, you can go and populate some information in your manifest. It'll go and create the folder and do that. The goal is the folder is not restricted to any specific MSIX package. So if you're doing all your line of business apps, you can create your happy Contoso LOB folder. And again, much like you could do in a QuickOnce or an MSI world, go ahead and add those apps back in. So this is all coming directly from listening to customers and trying to figure out some of the pain points they have and really trying to help them out there. The other thing that we're focusing on, and this is a little bit more towards the developer play, but it's something that's really helping developers as they want to adopt MSIX, is simplifying the way they can auto update their application. And we really are working with a bunch of medium to large ISVs on how can we create an experience that not only helps them update, but also gives the user an IT control in it. I think most of you guys know that there's a bunch of different auto updaters. Which ones do you want to go manage? How do you go and manage them differently? So what we're looking to do is actually create a model in MSIX that'll allow them to go and interact with some sort of service or service-like thing in Windows. And the developer can provide all the metadata they need to do for updating their app, and then the OS can go and control it. We can do some great things along that with honoring power policies better, not having the updaters run at random times and things like that. So we can tie it more into a better lifecycle management for Windows, and then also give you guys better control from an IT pro standpoint. Now, a couple of the key things that we really are trying to do that be a little more relevant for enterprises, the goal is all this metadata is in the package. So we do have an auto updating solution to kind of offset QuickOnce that we launched way back in, I think it was in 1809 was the first version of it, which is the app installer file. That's great for lightweight LOB type of stuff, but doesn't scale when an ISV really wants to use it because it's two artifacts that have to carry around. The goal should be as much like an MSI, you grab an MSI from Contoso.com. I can grab an MSIX package from Contoso.com, whether I install it directly from the web or I put it on a USB key and carry it within my enterprise, I should still have all that metadata available. We're working with some ISVs to figure out what kind of auth methods they want. So, obviously things like AAD and MSA are super easy for us to go code against. We want to make sure that, their updater service can work with us and do the right type of authorization it needs, right? So we don't want to have the user constantly having prompting for credentials and things like that. So how can we like SSO with their app or do things like that to really make it seamless, and hopefully when the user's logged in, offer things like background updates so that users are able to work and not be prompted with different update mechanisms. So I'll kind of jump a little bit more on the enterprise side of that. Some of the key things we're really focusing on when we look at that is, what's the centralized model for controlling these types of updates? We want to have a couple different levers. I think the first one that's more important is on or off completely. I don't really put that on the slide, but we expect to have that. But what we really want to get to is allow you guys to go and pick and choose which apps you want to auto update, right? So as Edge moves to MSIX, if they leverage this functionality, you might want to leave that auto update on. But some random media player that you might be using because you like it in your enterprise, you might still want to control the version of it because it could break playback for your users. So you'd be able to go and turn that one off. So we want to offer those controls at both an IT level and obviously let users, whether consumer or enterprise, go do that. In typical manageability style, if you guys put a policy down, we'll make sure the users can't change that policy on you. And we want to make sure that these are available through things like the CSP, which ConfigMan uses through the WMI interface and Intune uses natively, but also make sure these things are scriptable for you guys via PowerShell. So we want to always, when we build stuff in our platform, we're really looking to make sure that you folks as IT pros have all the ways you want to go do it. We definitely do things for the CSP so that MEM can go use it, but we want to make sure the scripting's there as well, because we know that not everything is always MEM controlled. Even in enterprises that have it broadly deployed, we know there's always like a small subset of things that might need to get managed either in air gap environments and other. So we try to bring the parity for everything that's done in a CSP WMI layer over to the scripting and PowerShell side. Okay. And then kind of building on that, and I don't know how far I got into the first part of the session, so I might have to backtrack a little. One of the features that we added in 2004 is the ability to add more package integrity of your app. So much like what we do with the Microsoft Store, the Microsoft Store has, we continually monitor the app, and if we ever notice that a file has been changed or corrupt, we mark that app as invalid and it can't launch, because we don't want the user running an app where a file has been tampered. So in the store workflow, obviously, because we know where the store is, we can go fix and remediate that app. As we build this auto update structure up, we want to build that package integrity repair controls out as well. So we want to make sure not only can a user's app update, if for any reason that app gets corrupted, like something inject itself and trying to overwrite a file, or just corruption happens every so often on a file system. How do we go and make sure that we have a flow to go and check the original source, validate that that app is valid, and then repair the files. And we do it at a file level because MSIX has that block map we can validate, and then go and restore those files. Developers get the opportunity to register the remediation location, but what we're also going to do is we're going to bring in some enterprise level controls. And I kind of put this through to as a comparison of like MSI installer repair source, where you can go and plug in some fallback locations. So even if you're not using the full auto updates, you can still take advantage of the remediation, and you might have the packages located on one of your servers in your network. You can go and push those as repair locations to your users. If for any reason that app got corrupted, in the background, it could silently repair itself on a schedule, or if the user launched it, it would go and check through the list of places to go repair and repair itself. So we're really trying to bring, whether you're using the store or distributing not through the store, all the parity of MSIX, and give the controls that are needed kind of within the enterprise. Okay. And the last thing I think is probably one of the bigger things that folks that are using AppV have been kind of asking for, and it's really getting to IT pros enabling shared containers, right? So we're going to start with a single shared container. We're going to make it obviously similar to connection groups, but we spend a bunch of time with different enterprises and some of our consultant folks, really understanding the challenges that people are having with connection groups and things like collisions and all that. And we're trying to build upon those learnings and then hopefully make something that's slightly simpler right now, but also doesn't have some of the challenges that have. So similar to connection groups, though, the IT Pro is the one responsible for defining the boundaries. What's different here is because right now we're just going to focus on a single shared container, you can go and set the boundaries like through a config file, but we're also looking to give you a deployment time opt-in. So maybe you're troubleshooting dust side and an app's misbehaving, and you're like, well, maybe I want to start troubleshooting and I want to put it into the container. You can go, opt in as a deployment command, understand the state of your environment, and then be like, oh, okay, maybe that was the problem. Now from an IT perspective, I can update my overall boundaries and kind of push that out en masse. So we wanted to give a little bit more flexibility on how the configuration can go happen. And then likewise, we'll let IT pros set the prioritization for conflict, because there is always a chance that, two people are trying to set the same reg key. So how do we go and prioritize those? So we're looking to actually, this will probably be one of the first things that you'll see come out in an insider build. Don't quite have the timeline, but I think we'll see something in the late autumn timeframe, because we actually do want to spend some time with folks like you guys that are using it, if you're AppV users, or even if you're not, and get feedback on it. We want to make sure that when we land this feature, we're landing it in a good way, and it doesn't have a kind of like the weird nuances that frustrate people with AppV connection groups. So stay tuned to, if you're in the MSIX tech community, you'll probably see a blog go live when it hits an insider flight. And then we'll have some docs, and we're happy to engage with anyone that wants to give us feedback on this feature, because we know it's really well needed, especially with things like WVD app or MSIX app attached for WVD, or anyone that just needs to use a shared container. And we'd love to get that feedback and make sure we're shipping a great product for you guys. And then just kind of walk through it. It's really simple. Obviously, if you're just deploying an app randomly, MSIX runs in its own container. You have the option to set up a shared container with a boundary. When that app's deployed, you would go into the shared container. All those apps in that shared container share the common registry and file system. So it's more like a contained, I guess I'll say like private OS, not really, but one shared VFS and one shared VReg for all those. More apps can go in there. Apps can still live on their own outside the container, where they're not interacting with other apps or anything in that shared container. So giving you a little bit of the flexibility, especially with some of these legacy apps that you want to move the installer forward, but you don't want to touch or change the code. So that's kind of the big things in the roadmap. We're doing some more developer stuff, like around improving some of the Azure CI/CD pipelines. This is probably going to be ongoing over the next 6 to 9 months. The nice thing about this is that you don't have to tie it to a Windows OS. So as we're working with devs, we're trying to make it really simple. If you're building or deploying apps, to just generate the MSIX package immediately. Cool. And how much time do I have, Greg? Do you want me to keep going a little bit more? Maybe. Okay. I'll just keep going.
Sorry, double muted. You can go another 5 or 7 minutes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll cover this. So last thing I'll kind of touch upon is the Windows Package Manager. Not sure how many people got to catch parts of build, but the Windows Package Manager is something my team, myself own. And it's really an easy way for developers to set up their dev boxes. So the preview launched at build. We're primarily aimed at developers. But longer term, we're not sure it's not really an exclusive to developer thing. It's an app installation thing. But it's really just going to be an open Windows catalog of apps that you can use for discovering, installing, upgrading your apps and tools. Currently, we work with MSIX, MSI, and XE. We are looking to add zip files as well, especially when you get into that dev tooling space. There's just a bunch of things that are zip. What's nice about this is everything is done in the open. So the apps are submitted to an open source repository. We don't, unlike the store, we don't ingest any of the content. The content is hosted on whatever website. So, if someone submitted an Adobe Reader, we reference the Adobe Reader's website. The listing, which is a YAML file, has all the metadata about the app, along with the download URI, and we hash the file. So why that's important is anytime someone submits a PR to be in our package manager, we actually go and verify on the back end that the file that they submitted doesn't have malware in it. So we run it against our malware service. And then it's based on that hash. So if it's good, we'll go and promote it and let people take advantage of it. We don't do things like the store of like, do we not like the way this app is behaving or things like that. We leave that a little bit more open because it's the dev side. But we're really around making sure that malware doesn't make it to the device. So there's at least a good promise there. So if someone submits an app and then under the covers tries to change that app on their server to inject malware or something bad, we would notice that hash changes and we would actually never download that file. So if you just go to the command line and you were to type winget space install, VS Code, it would go and download VS Code locally and then do the unattended installation. So making it really easy to kind of go script and set up dev boxes. But again, it doesn't always have to be exclusive to dev. It's a great repository of apps for anyone to go and take advantage of. The cool thing in general is we are doing all of this in the open. And I say we're doing it all in the open, but some of the open source stuff that we do in general is mostly open, with some of it in the, still in the Microsoft DevOps side of the house. 100% of this is in the open. The public backlog is in the open. We're doing iteration planning in the open. We're doing specs in the open. So we're really trying to make sure that we're not keeping anything internal and letting the community help us drive this to the right types of things. So that's the GitHub for the backlog and the client. There's another packages GitHub that is linked to from there. So if you want to submit apps or you want to see the apps that are in there, you can go check that out. This is just the command line. The thing that we're also looking to do, and this will probably come sometime next year, is support for enterprise repositories. So we know that developers do like having internal repositories of their own development tools. So we're going to create the ability for either off a UNC share or from an internal web server, and that internal could just be auth, Azure if you want. Create your own repository. Now, the package manager will give the ability to have multiple repositories, and you can set the order that you want things to go search. You can also remove the default repository or any other repositories. So we're going to give that kind of functionality to go and allow people to attach and detach different sources as they see fit. Obviously, when the end user or developer is using that, we'll actually merge all that into a single view. So they'll see, a concatenation of all those repositories available to them when they're searching, installing, and updating apps. So folks that are kind of interested in that, how do you get the preview? If you're using an insider build, we're actually pushing the update as part of the insider program. If you're on a retail build and you want to check it out and you want to stay up to date, we actually opened our own preview program. So all of this is built into what we call the desktop app installer app. Folks might know that as the UX that pops up when you double click an MSIX package. So that's kind of our out of band way to do more with app installation, so we don't have to constantly service Windows. So if you're on a retail build and you opt in your MSA, we can go and update all the way down to 1709 and get you guys up to date on that. And if you don't want to use an MSA and you don't want to deal with any of that, we do have a signed version of the client out on GitHub, so you can just pull that down and go manually check it out. So we'd love your feedback. We think it's a great thing. We've been getting a lot of positive press since build on the feature functionality of it.
Couple questions for you, John.
Yeah.
Since you're on winget, and I'll go back to a couple of MSIX. There's a question if they'll get any PowerShell commands to go with it.
So if we'll go and let the package manager install PowerShell scripts?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Or are you saying you want the command line itself to be PowerShell and like a command line?
Yeah, let's see if William clarifies. I was thinking he was asking if you could use PowerShell to call winget,
Yeah.
command.
Okay, so, that's in our backlog. You should go upvote that. It's actually been an ask. So when we first did it, we thought everyone wanted solid command line, and the community's been pretty vocal. They really want it so they can, create an object and do all the kind of fun stuff with it. So it's something we're looking at, and right now it's just, in the queue, behind the other items that are in front of it. So if you want that, totally go search the item in the GitHub CLI or the winget CLI repo and upvote it. It's pretty high up there in general, so I think we'll get to it sooner than later. But if you want it sooner, obviously just upvote and we kind of work from that.
Cool. All right, now a few MSIX questions. Is there any guidance or ways to migrate custom scripts and app vconfigs to MSIX?
Ooh, not right now, but I'd love to, whoever that is, if they email me, I'd love to spend a little time with you, and maybe we can, help you with a combination of the MSIX packaging tool conversion and the package support framework and kind of build the script out. Depending on how it's done, it might be something we can help you automate, and then we can just put into our MSIX toolkit. So whoever submitted, hit me up, and I'd love to chat a little more on that.
Okay. Yeah, Troy, if you're still there, that'd be good. If you want to, if you want to give us your contact or let me know, and I can forward it to John. Okay. Next question. Is it possible to convert or package drivers and firmware to MSIX? That's the first part of the question. So really drivers and firmware.
Yeah, so drivers and firmware, we're not looking to do in MSIX. It's just, we're trying to really separate into the user level. Now, that being said, we have been working with OEMs for support apps that are tied to drivers to create a relationship between those two. And then the app gets serviced from Windows Update. So the MSIX package would say, hey, I need this driver. And they could get, essentially co-installed there. We're not looking to, we really want to stay out of the admin elevate path with MSIX,
Okay.
minus services, which we did for enterprises.
Okay. And another part of that question, is there anything special with apps that have context menu or shell extensions on the OS?
So most shell extensions work. I'll be honest, there's one or two apps like 7-Zip that do some pretty crazy improc stuff that just don't work. So we're longer term trying to figure out how to go help Shim do something for that. But there's some stuff in Windows that really doesn't want that to happen, because shell reliability, like the crashes you see in Explorer and Shell, are actually driven from the way they're calling the improc sensibility there. So it's a problem for, 7-Zip's probably the most pronounced one that everyone kind of seems to call out, myself included, that does it that way. And we're trying to figure out if we can do something.
Checking those addresses, bud. For the RDBDF.
Somebody's not on mute. I'll see if I
Oh.
can find.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, so it's definitely something we're aware of and we're looking at, and we're trying to figure out, is there a way, we can put some, I always use the term shim and get slapped around by developers for it, but some sort of shim or something in place to kind of intercept those calls and then redirect them so that it's getting out of the shell path and not, crashing Windows and Explorer, but making it so the app can run without having to go change the code. So yeah, definitely aware of that and trying to figure that one out. As a whole, shell extensibility works. There's a bunch of pretty sophisticated apps, like even WinZip shipped a UWP version at the time in the store that has all the full context menu availability in it. But we totally get it. There's still some legacy stuff that's calling legacy methods, which still work. So we have to figure out how to get those up and running for you guys.
Okay. And last question I see here. How about training or primers, or how to get into MSIX, troubleshoot it, and all that good stuff?
That's a good one. All right, so we have some labs out there, and we had a few basic exercises. I tried to launch these actually before build, and unfortunately the COVID stuff really did slow us down. So we hope to get this out in the next couple weeks, but there are some labs out there now. There's 6 of them. We're expanding them to 10, and then we have a little bit of a roadmap that hopefully by the end of the year we'll add a few more. And they cover some of the deployment basics, the conversion basics, using the package support framework that I talked about. So those are all available. Basically what you can go do is, if you're using Hyper-V, there's this option called Quick Create, and you can just pull down a 1909 image. It's got the MSIX packaging tool on it, the feature on demand. It's kind of just a ready to go eval version of Windows. And then you can grab our lab files. We have sample apps and scripts and everything in there. And all that's out on a GitHub that you can just pull the zip file down, along with some instruction docs that kind of walk you through the series of labs. So love to get feedback on other things you're looking for. We build out those modules if you guys give us ideas, but it's something we're definitely trying to get more and more out there for you guys. Cool. And then touch on one other, because I had it up before. The other thing is, we spent a bunch of time after, especially after Ignite last year, we've been getting a lot of feedback on our doc site in general. Our doc site started off okay, and then it got a kind of little muddied as different features were coming in. We actually rebooted it quite a bit in early February. We restructured the whole thing, added a whole bunch of deemed missing content, which legitimately was missing content, and moved it to more scenario focused. So spent a bunch of time with feedback we learned at Ignite, feedback from our TAP customers, and there's a whole bunch of new content out there, along with like the understandings of the basics. So the stuff you'd hear John drone about when he talks at what is MSIX session, trying to put that all into the docs, as well as one of the other popular things that folks have been asking is, what are customer success stories? So we've been working really hard with some of our TAP customers and varying people to give us the PR approval to produce different types of collateral. So these are some of the people that we've been working with that have given us approval to talk about, and then a we're trying to get all their success stories out there. I think 3 of the 5 are out there already. Those are on the doc site. I created my own ik.ms link directly to this page. So if you're just wondering what some other enterprises are doing, we're trying to get more and more information just so you guys feel comfortable if you're looking to adopt, knowing that, hey, am I the first person? Because you don't see anything out there. Mostly it's just a whole bunch of PR approvals to really get this stuff out there.
All right, and I'll leave one good question here. Have you created an MSIX for the CM console and for Office 365?
I did at one point have one for the Config Man console, and I was working with DJM to try to get him to build one, and then we both got busy and dropped it. I'd love to talk about Office, but you're recording.
Brian says he's joking on the 365.
I mean, I don't care actually at this point. So we're actively working with Office to move to MSIX. When's it going to happen? It's not going to happen this calendar year, but stay tuned. Maybe we'll hear more next calendar year. But both our teams are actively working on that. One of the biggest things that we're actually making sure happens is, well, I should say one, there's 2 fundamental things that we want to see happen with Office. Is the first thing is you guys as IT pros don't have to think any differently about how you deploy it, right? And I don't mean like the tech underneath won't change, but just the workflows that you have. So how do we make sure that entire pipeline of what you guys learned about deploying O365 doesn't fundamentally change, even through the part of when we push down an update, can we actually shuffle the same bits that are unchanged on the box so you don't have to re-download? The other thing we're really working on is supporting plugins. Obviously we always say this is the set of plugins we support. Quite honestly, we never want to break a user, right? So we do a lot of extensive testing, in Office in general to make sure that even old plugins that we may or may not support, just work. Because the last thing we ever want to do is take down someone that's using Office, especially at like end of quarter, end of year, and things like that. So it's a little bit slower than we would have liked, but we're both on a path to get there. So I'm working with my buddies over in Office to hopefully populate something at some point that says, hey, it's coming, but I'm not sure yet. And I think we're just waiting for at least a date when we can say a preview would be out there.
Okay, cool. All right, so there is one more question, but let me throw out there first. We're going to get our timer for our break going here. Just another question or two. Oh, you got a couple more in here, John. Why asking if the MSIX app is built in the install for the MSIX app built in MSIX?
The MSIX package tool or the
desktop? Why isn't the MSIX app install built in MSIX?
It is built in MSIX.
Oh, good, because he did ask, or is it? So good. Okay.
Yeah. So originally it came out as AppX because we built it while we were still building the MSIX platform, but since then we've officially updated it to MSIX.
Okay, cool. Do you have a list of vendors already offering MSIX as installers?
I don't have one that I can publish on my website yet. That's the problem. So I'm trying to get approval for that, but nothing that I can do yet. So that's my existence is PR approvals.
Is there an easy way to discover those, or you just need to go ask vendors, or what?
You just need to go ask vendors.
Okay.
Now, if they're in our package manager repository, we tell you the installer type there.
That's nice. Okay, cool. Good hot tip. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's it in the questions. So I think we're good, John. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate you coming back to do the second half, and sorry about the issues this morning.
Personally my fault. Sorry, I rambled on without you guys there. Always a pleasure seeing you guys. Feel free to reach out to me. I do my best to answer questions as fast as possible. Just always understand sometimes I get busy, but if you guys have questions, I'm happy to help you guys.
Good. All right, man. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. Yep.
Brian, Greg, Mike, everyone.
All good. Thank you. Okay, so we'll take about 3 more minutes here, and then we'll have Morris give us our last session of the day on endpoint analytics. So hang tight for that. I think we have one more raffle to go as well. So somewhere here. Oh, we're going to do it after Maurice's session just to keep you here. So there's that. And then also just a reminder, we do have the end of the day survey, and I'll probably throw that in the chat about halfway through this session, just to get your feedback. We want to make sure we get some good feedback for our future meetings. So just under 2.5 minutes, I'll go on mute here and step away for a minute.